Oh. Testing one.
Are you
Usually
able?
Me too.
lasers.
Do you have a wired USB or?
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. I work
Well,
with-
I sent you guys.
Am I-
Squeaky chair.
All right, good evening, everyone. I officially call this planning board meeting to order. The first order of business would be to appoint Jim Maderis from the alternate position to join us.
I so move.
You don't need to move. He can just do it, but thank you.
So approval of the minutes from our April 2nd meeting.
I found no error.
I had sent my clips to Kathy already, so.
I read it. I didn't have a problem with any of it either. Anybody have any?
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
Okay, Carter, how do you vote?
I will abstain.
I vote yes.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm staying. I was.
Okay. Good. Minutes are approved as written. And invitation for public comment. Know that we have anybody here for public comment and nobody on,
we don't take.
and we don't take up
Comment.
from the Zoom anyway. That's right. So, so that brings us right to
Should we
Heather.
make sure, I can't remember his name, who someone's joining us remotely.
Charles.
Perfect.
Okay, so Heather, you're with the Office of Planning and Development? Yep. And you're here tonight to talk about National Floodplain Insurance Program and the FEMA maps and.
An introductory 101 type presentation for you. Thank you. So the PowerPoint version is that, or I'm PDF version. That's fine. Yeah, that's good. You make it full screen. Yes. I think if you click that middle button on the top that has the box, yep. Well, that works. Then we can just flow through it. So I've been in this position with OPD, with Office of Planning Development for just a few months now, not very long. Do you want me to move so people can see me? Sort of like looking at
Or
Yeah.
maybe,
I'm
you
not
know,
sure what-
I'm gonna try and do this.
and say,
I mean, I've already looked at this, but I'll.
Okay.
follow along with you.
Oh, where do you want me?
Yeah.
So I do have Kyle working, who's my Region 1 FEMA coordinator on the line, because I haven't been in the position very long, and I have this introductory presentation for you, but in the event you have any other questions, I'll turn it over to Kyle, or I'll ask him to pipe in. So this is actually a presentation that I modified that is on our website. It's a video that you can actually go to the OPD website, and there's a whole series of introductory videos that you can watch that can give you any different manner of information if you want. But I modified this for you today to have, so I could just have some visuals to show you as I go through. So with our office, it's called the Floodplain Management Learning Flood. Can you scroll down just a little bit so that there we go. So flood is what they're called. They're flood modules on our website. And there's a lot of information on there. So that's what it is. If you can scooch to the next.
There. Right. I thought there was a
What do you mean?
way over that.
I'm sorry. If you give me 1 sec, let me try to download the video. Or the.
we have a drama club. Yeah, the drama club is preparing for the spring show, so Kathy's actually been involved with it quite some time.
Down on the bottom right next to the scroll.
There we go.
Good. Do we want, is Kyle on mute, or should we unmute him? I think I saw him on there.
I think I can unmute myself. Can you guys hear me?
Oh,
Yes, we can.
Sure.
All right,
No, you can pipe in if you need to.
sounds good.
So I have learned in the past few weeks that floods are the most common disaster that we have. And so part of the purpose of the floodplain program is to help communities develop responsible practices that can minimize damages from flood and also improve resiliency and environmental factors, things like that. So if you go to the next screen, we'll have the screen. So these are the three features of the National Flood Insurance Program. So being able to have insurance is flood insurance, be covered by FEMA for damages is the main benefit of joining the National Flood Insurance Program. And what that entails is there's regulations that are part of the federal regulations that you need to adopt. There's basic standards. We try to encourage you to adopt higher standards, and we help you develop those higher standards. We do have model ordinances at the state that we've developed to help communities figure out how to get the regulations into their ordinance. And we provided the state office assistance with your regulations. We'll review them with you, for you, we'll make recommendations, comments. So we provide all sorts of assistance. We're here for you to help with implementing these regulations, with understanding the regulations, with complying with the regulations, enforcement, all of those things if needed. We're here to provide support for all of that stuff. FEMA goes through the process of updating their maps. I'm doing this in reverse. FEMA is going through updates of different watersheds right now. There's a lot of mapping going on for communities. And that's another one of the benefits is that they produce these maps and very technical detailed maps where they have information. So when they develop new maps, they expect communities to adopt those maps. That's part of your requirement for complying with the FEMA regulations. So we come to your community or however you need us, and we'll present the maps and help you understand them, and help generate understanding of the process and what the timelines and the deadlines are for whatever feedback you want to give on your mapping or questions that you want to have on mapping. I'm not sure where Temple is.
We don't have maps right now.
Okay.
They just, I think the second round of preliminary maps was just completed at the Kentucook watershed is
Yeah.
further along
Yes.
than the Sauhegan.
Okay.
But we expect, I think the second round, at the end of May is the deadline for appeals
Okay.
for what I
Right.
believe is the last round of review of the maps for Sauhegan, and that's already happened for Kentucook. So I don't know how quickly they finalize after that appeal process has ended.
Kyle, do you know the answer to that? Is this the same watershed when we were talking about November being the date of the?
Yeah, so there's a specific group in our agency here in Region 1 called the Risk Analysis Branch, and they lead the mapping program and sort of the timelines for that. As folks may or may not know, FEMA is running at about 60% of their authorized workforce. So we do see some delays in some of these things. Generally, there's that appeal period, and then basically all the information that comes in through those appeals, and extra information that's provided by communities, by individuals, etc. That is reviewed. If necessary, the maps are updated. And eventually, basically, it gets to what we call the LFD, the letter of final determination. And basically, once that LFD is issued, the maps are all, for all intents and purposes, final. If you're in the appeal period, then we probably don't have an LFD yet. I can check with that group, and maybe Heather can get back to you with, an expected timeline, but I would not be surprised if whatever the current timeline is slips, a month or a couple of months. But yeah, so those changes are integrated, the LFD goes into effect, and then communities that want to participate have 120 days to adopt the maps if they have existing ordinance. It sounds like in your guys' situation, you're not currently a participating community, so you're not under any, this is a totally voluntary program. And so, you're not under any sort of deadline like that, but once that LFD is issued, that for all intents and purposes, you can plan on that being the official map for your area once that date rolls around.
Okay,
You can go to the next. I think I have it in there. Oh, there. Yes. So yeah, it's a voluntary program, as Kyle mentioned, to participate. I think most communities in New Hampshire are participating. Over 90% are participating. We've had 6,940 policies since June of 2022. I think there's only 12 communities that are not participating. You probably get a letter from us every year.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
we're still here.
Yep.
Just give us a call. And more than 53 million insurance claims have been paid out to FEMA as a result of this. So again, it's the claims and the insurance that's the real benefit.
Is it pretty widespread, or do you see it more like imagine the seacoast, you'll see more claims than?
There's I believe definitely there are more programs certainly and more activity happening on the seacoast. I don't think that would not be, but I really haven't been with the program long enough to know where. I mean, we've got a lot of rivers.
Yeah.
And river flooding may potentially be more damaging because people aren't necessarily expecting it. Whereas on the seacoast, they're all.
Yeah, we hear about it. Yeah, more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In the lakes, New Hampshire is a very wet state.
It
So
is.
I'm not sure. Kyle, you probably don't know. Kyle, do you have any idea where most of the activity in terms of?
It really depends year to year. Some years, like this winter we had a lot of coastal flooding issues. Hampton and other communities down there really got pummeled with those coastal storms. But if you think back a little bit to like Irene and some of those other events, New Hampshire has had historically some pretty intense riverine flooding events as well. I couldn't say whether in terms of those claims, if it's 50-50 or something like that. In a given year, it might be 90-10 one way or the other. But the program is, intended to give anybody who, thinks they're in a flood prone area, the opportunity to access that insurance as a hedge. We find that folks who have flood insurance, whether they were required to or not, their trajectory for recovery after a flood event is their outcomes and the timeline for them to, rebuild, to build their lives back and recover from that disaster. They're just orders of magnitude better than what we see for folks who don't have that coverage. So
What is the overhead for maintaining this? So we have to add it to our zoning ordinance, right? Is that correct? And then are there other things in the future that we need to be aware of, or?
Not necessarily. I mean, so as part of the program, when you're talking about overhead, so once you get
the planning board and.
Right. Once you have the regulations in place, you have to implement that. So whatever staff you would need to sort of
To implement.
to review, like, now you have a requirement for a building, which may be consistent with your building regulations. Anyway, I'm not sure how different your regulations already are from what requirements of people would be, but it would involve reviewing permits to be compliant with those regulations. We would come, I'm not sure how variable or off it is, but we make rounds around the state where we'll go and visit and do audits to see if there are compliance issues. And I haven't been here long enough to know how that process goes, but so if there's an audit and it uncovers something, then we would work with you to bring that situation into compliance.
Is that like an audit of what?
Some of the property or the regulations?
I do believe like it's an in-person visit. Kyle, can you chime in on this one as well, since I've been here
Yeah.
long and participated in the
Yeah.
audit?
Yeah, no worries. These are great questions. In terms of, I can answer the audit question first. We have, so we, you know, the Region 1 flood insurance program team, which I sit on, it basically we work with states, so Heather and her group, and communities directly to support essentially compliance with the regulations that are in the, you know, the federal regulations. But again, those federal regulations are implemented through the town ordinance. And there are, you know, certain record keeping requirements. The community is required to designate a you know, a community official as their, you know, community floodplain manager, or their floodplain management official. Oftentimes for small communities, that is, you know, your building inspector, or, you know, if you're a larger town, somebody on your planning team or things like that. But it can, you know, there's flexibility there.
Could
So
it be the selectmen, Kyle?
what's that?
Could it be the selectmen?
You know, I'm not 100, you know, we try to communicate when we are doing official communications, like if there was a problem with your program and something needed to be adopted, we do like to make contact with an elected official. So probably the chair of the select board or something like that. So if there is official communications that are, you know, we're trying to work through you know, what we would say is maybe a medium to large problem, we would communicate directly with you guys. So we regularly do communicate with elected officials like selectmen. I'm not aware off the top of my head of a community that has a selectman as their floodplain official, but depending on, you know, the structure of your community, that, you know, if that makes the most sense, we could certainly figure out, you know, if that was something that we, you know, I don't see why it would be a problem, particularly if that person is, you know, is sort of deputized with, so, you know, if the select board is ultimately signing off on, you know, these building permits and things like that, then that, you know, the authority sits with that body. So I don't think it would be problematic at all to have
Yeah.
somebody there designated in that role. So
That's how regulations are written, that it's the code enforcement is the select board unless they delegate it to someone else. So it's ultimately it sits with the select board.
yeah,
I mean, in other communities, like Crawford where I live, it's the person who's responsible for the zoning is the one floodplain coordinator. So if it's in this community, it's an elected official. That makes sense.
Yes. And they could delegate it to somebody, but ultimately, you know, it starts with them.
yeah. So in that case, you know, the overhead question, you know, if that's part of your guys's, you know, operations already, then the overhead might not be a big lift. The amount of overhead can vary depending on the the levels of mapping in your community. So, you know, basically the ordinances that are required will vary depending on, so if you have, you know, a river where there's a designated floodway, you know, then you have to have a higher level ordinance than a community that just has, you know, what we call like an unnumbered A zone or something like that, an area that we identify as prone to flooding, but there's not really good data. So, you know, those standards are a little more lenient to account for that fact. I think there was a question in there that I probably missed. So
Well, when you were saying right now, Kyle, just for clarification, when you're talking about overhead, are you meaning like oversight, as in depending on the levels of flooding potential, there may be more oversight or more impacts in terms of the regulations? But I think you were maybe asking about cost. And so there's no
Yeah.
necessarily, there's not really a relationship between cost
Sure.
and the levels of flooding.
Yeah,
Correct.
I think Kyle, you've answered my question. I was curious about the level of work required for the planning board or other
Right.
officials in town to maintain this going forward, right? Because we're adding something.
Yeah, there are some like record keeping requirements and things like that. You know, if you are, so if you're a participating community, basically any project, development as defined in the regulations, in the flood, the special flood hazard area, any flood zone, would require a permit, and you guys would be required to, keep a copy. Essentially, it can be a digital, file of that. At this point, like, we basically say into perpetuity. At some point, the program will probably come up with better guidance than that and say, 50 years or something like that. But if you don't have a lot of development, then, that burden, and if you guys are already permitting development, then that's not, where you're keeping records and things like that. It's not necessarily it wouldn't be a new requirement.
Right, okay.
So, my question was, it could be for either you, Kyle, or Heather, you can answer it, but so we have a permitting process that basically is a building permit that's signed by all three selectmen, and it's also signed by the road agent for driveway purposes, and the health officer, which is for septic or well and septic. And then we also have the building inspector sign off on the plans and inspect the foundation, et cetera, et cetera. And what I was thinking was, when we adopt this, that we will simply have a line on the building permit saying, are you in a floodplain zone, yes or no? And that'll red flag us. It's my interpretation of what I read today, because I looked at the maps, was zone in Temple, our zone A, or what they call the blue zone. And there's not that many, but they're definitely where obviously rivers are. That if you are in that zone, that it's mandatory that you buy, once we adopt it, the floodplain insurance. In other words, you can't get a mortgage, you can't get a building permit if you're in a floodplain zone unless you buy the insurance. That's the way I interpreted what I read today. But if you're not in a zone, because just because you're in a floodplain zone doesn't mean you can't still have permeable soil and meet all the requirements of like our town zoning. So as far as the town goes, I guess, you know what I'm saying? I was just.
Yeah, that's not my understanding, but Kyle, you were gonna jump in?
Yeah. So you're close, but just a little bit off. So if someone owns their home outright and it doesn't have a federally backed mortgage, there's no requirement for to carry flood insurance. Where those requirements come into play, no requirement from the FEMA side. Where the requirements come in is, anybody who has a federally backed mortgage. So if somebody, has a mortgage that is backed by the VA or FHA or rural development, those policies, if the structure is in the special flood hazard area, then federal flood insurance requirement stands. For folks who, certainly if it's available to you and you live in a participating community, those maps, do indicate that, and those are usually based on some pretty extensive studies, Particularly the newer ones do a lot of hydrographic and, have that kind of data in them, LiDAR for elevations and all those kinds of things. That there is a risk to your property and it would be wise to carry it. Folks who, we see the other element here is currently, right, nobody in the community can have federal flood insurance. We actually see I forget the number, but it's something like 40% of the claims or something like that actually come from people who hold flood insurance outside of the special flood hazard area. So, when we have these really big events, they might actually be, larger than what we're modeling, which is we call it a 1% annual chance or 100-year event. So, we're seeing more and more of those 100-year events. And so, yeah, so there is still a benefit to folks, and folks who are not in the special flood hazard area get pretty discounted policies and have a lot of options for lower levels of coverage that also brings down cost, et cetera. So, but yeah, so it's not a requirement that somebody, again, has the flood insurance from a federal side, unless it's, they are carrying a federally backed mortgage. Some lending institutions will go above and beyond that requirement. So they may require flood insurance, outside of the special flood hazard area and all that, but that's really private business, and not a requirement of our program, so to speak, but certainly folks would be eligible to get those, to cover any additional requirements from their banks or anything like that.
So I have a quick follow-up question. I think Bruce mentioned, like, on our building permit application, we would have that kind of yes or no, or are you in a floodplain? But it would be somebody's job to check that. Is that right? From the town's side, we would have to confirm.
Do you require surveyors to?
Is that, would that come up on the survey?
I think it will, the selectmen or
I
their
think,
appointee would.
I think Temple's emergency management director should probably be the one that would oversee that.
He could be.
When we had some major wind damage back in 2008. It was our emergency management director that oversaw all the things, getting the generators and the people with chainsaws to clear the roadways. I think Bill McDonald would be very good at that.
I think to answer your question, there is no requirement of a survey for a standard.
For you, that's what I was
building
wondering,
permit. For a subdivision, yes,
not for a building.
Yeah.
but just I own land.
But that would be the person that I would look to.
Yeah.
With their license on the line to accurately tell you.
Right, but if there's somebody building a garage or I don't know, something else on their property.
As long as they meet the basic setback and lot size requirements, I don't think they require a survey.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when you talk about oversight, whoever is gonna review the application, I don't know, does your emergency manager, they don't review? So whoever's reviewing, some person who reviews the application, one of the people would need to go on that FEMA and, go on to the map viewer.
And
see
confirm
if-
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's when we talk about implementing the ordinance, that's.
Okay,
The main
yeah,
part of
that's
it.
part of it.
So it might be more than checkbox. It might be, somebody verified this is in or not in a floodplain zone. It's
Okay.
some initial of the select board or their designee.
So I'm learning too, so I just want to clarify with Kyle. So it's not FEMA that requires the insurance, it's the federally backed agency that's offering the loan. Yeah, so what the NFIP program does is it allows you to get flood insurance if it's needed.
Through their program at
Right.
a reduced rate,
Yeah.
right?
Which you wouldn't be able to do it all
Right.
without participating.
Right.
So
This is currently not available to. a
Right, it's not available to anybody, but once you belong to the program, then you can actually get the flood insurance. Like you're not required to, but you're able to.
And is it true that if we don't adopt or don't participate in the program and someone wants to build in a mapped area, that federal requirement, if they had a federal mortgage, that still applies? They would still have to get flood insurance?
They wouldn't be able to.
But could they purchase it through a private? They can't even get it from a private.
No.
They would not be able to get any insurance at all. Okay.
So I can speak to that, sorry. So the requirement for a federally backed loan would still apply. However, yeah, so I mean, that's really, the sort of crux of the challenge here is, if you have folks who are, say, trying to move to your community or build in your community, and they need federally backed loans to do so, and they don't have access to the federal flood insurance program, that can be a really serious barrier. There are options for private flood insurance. They tend to be very expensive.
Yeah. I saw
Yeah.
a comparison a couple of years ago and it was pretty outrageous.
Yeah, and anybody who owns property or watches the news probably knows that insurance companies are going through a lot of major changes right now, and the costs of market insurance are going up as well. So it's having the federal program available is it's a real asset to folks who need to borrow to purchase a home or build a home.
Yeah, that triggered a memory because I was in a community that got mapped, and my private mortgage, not federally backed, said, "You're now in a flood zone. We have purchased insurance for you. The bill is $5,000 a year." And then I went to FEMA and got it for 1/10 of that, $500 a year.
Mm,
Was numbers I can remember.
It's a pretty good example.
yeah,
That
we've
was
kind of got you off
20 years
the
ago.
slide.
No,
but-
Like that.
that's the whole point of being here, like this is all driven by your questions, and that really is the point. I wanted to share that our office will assist with training and education, so part of what we agree to do with FEMA is to have workshops and training and webinars and things like that, so there's a whole suite of educational material that we can do about implementing the program. Technical webinars, technical information. So like I said, I haven't been here long enough to really be participating in a lot of those things, but that is part of our agreement with the state, with FEMA, is to provide education and training. And that can either be at your request, you say, hey, can you give us something on whatever, or I'll just reach out to you and say, hey, we're doing a series of trainings this week or this month or however, and this is when it is, and you can participate in that. So there's multiple ways to sort of get additional information about how to implement.
Yeah, because this doesn't need to go before the town. We would have
It-
hearings, but as a board, we can adopt this.
I believe it still has to go to voters
Oh,
now
it does.
in March, right?
Okay, that's
Yeah.
up to your community, how you.
Okay. Well, I guess that was my next question, is what is the process? Like, because I was counting back from March, right? So, and if the maps are done in November, they're in effect, and then we have a sort of brief period where people could not be able to get it, I guess, if we wait until March
Right.
to adopt. So, you're here today. So what are the steps if we decide to pursue this to get it going?
So it's my understanding is, and I'm gonna ask Kyle again to weigh in on, to jump in here, because I haven't gone through a process to the community yet.
Okay.
There's like applications need to fill out. and
Right,
there's, like,
I found
you get the
something
instructions.
online. Yeah, but I couldn't open the application.
Oh, no.
It was,
yes,
I got an
reach out to me
error.
And I'll help you with whatever needs to be.
Okay.
Needs to be done. Kyle, do you know how long it takes to go through the process to become a participating member?
So I think the primary timeline driver for New Hampshire communities is really the state town meeting law and process. You know, in some other states or in communities, you know, like a city that doesn't have a town meeting, you know, if it's something that, you know, under that town's rules, the mayor can do by executive order, change the ordinances, then it can basically be done in a day. There is obviously like, you know, it does take, you know, there are a lot of conversations that happen back and forth between the community with the, you know, with Heather and the state folks. And then we, along with the state, review the, you know, the primary thing really is a review of the ordinance to make sure that it complies with the requirements based on the status of the map in your community. That is the thing where there can be some back and forth. So what we usually recommend is some lead up, working with, you know, Heather and her team to, you know, work from usually a state model ordinance or something like that. And either, you know, adopt that or, you know, higher standards if you think that's appropriate for your community. And then, you know, work those essentially through the process, and we can do a pre-review, look at them ahead of time, make sure that they would meet the standards, you know, and basically you would be cleared for entering the program. So there is a little bit, you know, there can be a little bit of a runway there, but really the town meeting timeline is what we try to work around. I know I'm not privy to every single rule in New Hampshire. You guys probably know that a lot better than I do, but you know, I do know there are like communities need to notice a certain amount, you know, a certain time ahead, and things like that.
They're
There
required.
actually there is a little bit of coverage. I know there's a state law that basically says if you notice that you are going to make a change to your ordinances, essentially you have to de facto manage to what you've proposed until it's either approved or denied. So we
Right.
can sometimes do like interim status or something like that. So
Yeah, there's like, or there's like a 90-day freeze on an application. Or
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm getting the days right, but there's a freeze if someone were deciding they wanted to build in a flood area before we've adopted it. They would have to deny the application within a certain window, and it would have to wait until after the outcome of the vote.
But it sounds like we have to work from the town meeting.
Yes, yeah, that's what I got off of your website.
Yeah, I think, Kyle, isn't there something they have to fill out though? There's like a letter and an application, and I remember seeing some document that seems pretty extensive.
Yeah,
So I've actually never run through this process with a non-participating community. I've run through it a lot with changes to already participating communities. I think you're right. There's, you know, I think we need kind of like a letter of intent, and there is a little bit of paperwork. I don't think those are
no,
properly.
but I got something off of your site that says, first, number one, complete and submit the application for participation in the program. Number two is adopt a resolution of intent, which is done by the select board. Then there, you provided a sample resolution. And then that gets sent to, well, it says OSI, but I know that's not what you're
Yeah,
called anymore, so OPD.
We're still trying to get it all.
Well, it still says OSI, but OPD, which is signed by the select board. We do the subdivision and site plan regulations. with some NFIP language, which you also provided. And we're actually updating our subdivision regs right now. Not with flood stuff, because we hadn't looked at that yet, but, just in general.
I've got to get you that application because I have a feeling that you're gonna want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody else was in the process of doing it. It was like my second day on the job, and I found the link for her, and it said like application made easy. And I looked and I somehow just caught a glimpse of it, and it was like not easy. So,
Yeah, well, I just got an error message saying it wasn't available, and it took me to the FEMA site.
maybe you shoot me an email of
Yeah,
what you tried to do, and I'll.
okay. And then it says we look at the sample ordinances which were not available online, the minimum requirements, but you did have stuff about the higher regulations. So
Yeah.
I looked at a couple of other towns just very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I was told just yesterday that our model ordinance was not online because we were worried people were gonna adopt it wrong.
Oh,
So we do have a model ordinance, and it's intentionally not available online because I guess people were just taking it and not, like, I'm not sure what they were doing. but I
yeah,
can also
okay.
find that for you, that I brought a pad of paper.
That would be very good.
Yeah, to see what it looks like. Yeah, I mean, here's the resolution for the select board. I have the subdivision, it's just a one pager. This is both subdivision and site plan, which I can send out. This is about the building code changes that were made. Then I have another one, which was just an update to the regulations. It looks like 2018, which may not be the most recent version. But I thought that, so I looked at Mason and I looked at Lineborough, and Lineborough does theirs as like a standalone ordinance, which is about 10 pages. And then Mason's was interesting because in their zoning ordinance, they just say floodplain development, they spelled development wrong. Or so when you say they may have just adopted their own, I was like, okay. They just have a paragraph that says they adopt the minimum requirements and they cite,
Yeah.
the version, and then they have an appendix that has one,
Right.
which I don't know what year it's from, but it says in their one paragraph as updated by the state. So they refer to potential, but this is
They
their.
might have been one of those communities.
This is what, like, their example of what it could look like, but then they refer people to the state to look at, which I couldn't find it anywhere on the state site, so. So there's different ways to do it, I guess. I don't want to get anybody in trouble in Mason,
Well, I
but
mean, they're participating.
they are on the
They-
map
they
as
must have
participating.
reviewed- Somebody must have reviewed that.
Yeah,
Said that was.
yeah, it looked like they adopted it a while ago, so. 1992,
Oh, yeah, it was a while ago.
so.
Is there more to the slide?
Yeah, we can go ahead. So this is just sort of an example of, how the parties involved with the National Flood Insurance Program. So FEMA, there's the New Hampshire Floodplain Management Program, the blue circle, which is my office. And then FEMA, we work very closely with them. Kyle's been wonderful helping me learn all about the program and how to implement it. So we rely on them quite a bit when we need to. And then you guys, of course, the communities. So all together, we sort of work together to try to make it happen. And what we do, this is kind of, I already mentioned, the services that we provide is we help to administer for FEMA, and we provide all different sorts of technical assistance, which I'm still learning about all the technical systems that we provide. So there's quite a lot of resources and a lot of information on our website, and also you can just reach out to me and I can help you find information. There's so much information on the FEMA websites and just out there in general. And our website has links to all those locations, so you can just fall right down the rabbit hole and be gone for days.
I don't want to do that. I would like for somebody from your office to show up and tell us,
Yeah.
advise us on how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I just take it day by day. I learn one thing at a time, and that's how it happens. And then part of our mandate with FEMA is because FEMA wants to expand the state's program. You know, they want to support us financially, the state to implement the program, and it's their goal to expand and increase implementation and participation. So they help us to provide a lot of resources to do that. And one of the things we do is we agree to try to help you to adopt more, better regulations, as in above the minimum. So we have higher standard ordinance as well. And we make lots of recommendations about how things could be more stringent standard to better protect against floods.
And that takes into consideration our unique conditions in Temple, not just.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where having qualified technical professionals really, really valuable.
Right.
And I'm hoping to hire some soon. There's one more slide, I think. So this is just an example of those are actually links, if you, those underline
Mhm.
to our website. But there's tons of information on there for property owners and for consultants, for community officials. One of my goals for the next year is to make that website a little more accessible. If you've been there, you've probably seen it's like link.
Yeah.
To me, I find that very overwhelming. So one of my goals is to make that clear, like what's where, and put a more manageable amount of information there to make it so you're not just like your eyes glazed and then you go to some other website. But there is a lot of information. You guys asked great questions. I was hoping that you would, and I'm glad Kyle is here to help answer them. Do you have other questions?
Well, I think, so
I
the
guess-
maps are November, is that what the
I think
the
that's what you
target date is, November?
Right, is that correct, Kyle?
Let me pull that up. I can try and check it right now. Heather, just as an aside, I just sent you an email with the initial community application form. It's a 1-page form, and about a third of that page is actually for FEMA's paperwork, not your guys' paperwork. So the initial sort of application, and again, that I think is supported with letters and things like that, but shouldn't be a huge lift. There are some questions in there about like how many acres of flood prone land are in your community and things like that. And we could certainly work with you guys to,
Try to figure that out.
yeah, based on the maps, figure that out roughly, but I don't think it's absolutely critical that that's like a with plus or minus 1 acre kind of estimate or anything like that.
So I guess then, because I'm a process person, I'm trying to think this through it backwards. March, we typically have our first hearing in December if we're presenting any changes, and then would have a second one in January. So we would have, something would have to be written, go through your review, go through legal review, like. So we sign this application, say, and the select board signs a letter of intent that triggers you guys and your technical team coming to meet with us to help us draft. Or I guess before we draft anything, we would be looking at it to decide how to proceed.
Yeah, and I can get you the model ordinance, so you have
Yeah.
right away.
Yep,
So you have something to look at and you can ask questions.
okay,
Yeah, and we could do a series of Zoom meetings to talk about it. And that whatever questions you may have. That's really our goal. I mean, I would say our most important role is to provide assistance to communities that want to come on. So we would be very available to help you do that.
So the only thing that could be a negative here is if the maps don't actually come in
right,
time,
And we
right,
have to
that's
wait.
true,
then we have to wait another whole year
right,
because of our process. I think the last hearing dates are, I think like the middle of February, first week.
Or
of
early February.
Yeah, so that's the only thing that could really kill this would be, for this year is if those maps don't come in time.
So you want to see the maps before you decide whether you want to join or?
Well, so we could adopt the
You could-
non-mapped community ordinance, but then we would still have to go through the same process the following year, right? Once we have maps.
You know,
What's the
kind of
difference from one year to the next?
is not that they have to wait for the maps to adopt. Do I have the wrong idea there?
Kyle, are you muted?
Yeah, you're muted. I'm not sure if you're talking. He might have stepped away for a minute.
Oh, sorry. I was just trying to look up the estimated LFD date for your community. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Asking, do they have to wait for the maps to be, for the LFD letter to be issued before they can adopt? I was thinking that regardless of whether the maps were ready, that they could join and adopt an ordinance. But they're pointing out, well, if the maps aren't done, then they would have to participate in a different way as not having maps.
So I believe the community probably has maps. They may not be digitized maps. They may not be very extensive. So, but there isn't really a requirement to wait from like the FEMA side to adopt the ordinance. It just the when the map updates occur, there is like, yeah, it becomes very clear very quickly what level of regulations you'll need to adopt, what you know the requirements are going to be. So like a lot of these questions, the answers are just, this is the box you're going to need to check. Where if we're doing it ahead, what we'd have to do is look at, go back to whatever the old mapping was for the community or the county and determine what the level is. And, there may be issues with adopting higher standards for things that don't exist, except how would you enforce them? So I don't think we've really seen that before. But I don't think it would really be a problem. Anticipating an upcoming map, you could certainly put the ordinance on the books, and then, when the map, the LFD is issued, then you could adopt the what we call the FIS, the flood insurance study, and the map date, effective with that date. So that could be an option. While I'm chatting here, it looks like the appeal period ends on the maps 5/28/2024, so about a month and a half from now. The estimated, and again, this is estimated LFD date would be so basically a year later. So May 28th of 2025. Again, that is totally an estimate at this point, depending on the scale of, comments and appeals and things like that. It could take longer. If it's very clean and there's not a lot of appeals and, we get positive feedback, it could be a little sooner than that. But basically, you're looking at probably a year from now, as a rough estimate of when your maps the new map would take effect.
So does it make sense for them to become a member and adopt an ordinance in March before the final map is done?
I think I'm going to hedge this a little bit, but I think it depends. If the community, it's up to the community. Again, it's a voluntary program implemented at the local level. If you guys have concerns and you're like, aware of people who are trying to get, you know, federally backed mortgages and can't because of the lack, you know, then, you know, you might look at a timeline that is very aggressive. If you're not aware of those issues and this is more trying to be proactive for the future, then you know, it would not be unreasonable to wait and see. You know, again, when the LFD drops, you'll have you know, I think it's 120 days to adopt before. But again, you don't actually have a requirement to adopt within 120 days of the LF, or, you know, after the LFD letter drops. It just, if you were already a participating community, basically when that letter goes, you know, goes out, it has a date 120 days out. And if a community wants to remain participating, then they have to adopt the updated map by that date.
So Kyle, the maps we have now, how likely would it be that those would change between now and, you know, when they finalize them?
I'd have to look at them. I can pull up and take a look and see if they're already digitized and the maps are, you know.
You're talking about the preliminary maps.
Yes.
He's talking about the
Oh,
draft.
yeah, sorry, the preliminaries. It depends. There can be localized changes. Like, you know, I can think of an example in New Hampshire where during the appeal period, we heard from a dam operator and they said, hey, the data you guys used, you know, in your study about our dam was there was a mistake in there. And so that led to a change that was pretty local around the dam, you know, like in that neighborhood. So we do see changes like that. Wholesale changes are more rare. Most of the, you know, the standard for the data that it would take to really change some of this, you know, once preliminary maps are going out, we wouldn't expect them to change a whole lot. But that doesn't mean on a local level at an individual property or, you know, a neighborhood level within a community, there isn't a change, if
So
that makes
I'll
sense.
give you an example. So right now, they have an appeal process that ends in a month, on May 28th of this year, based on the current preliminary maps. And now when the mapping's finalized and there's changes, somebody's property is now all of a sudden in the flood prone area, what appeal process does that person have?
Yeah, so that's actually a fantastic question. So there are a few options depending on what they're trying to accomplish. So if, say, back to our example where they have let's say a federally backed mortgage and they are newly mapped into the area, but let's say their house is built on fill, and so they believe that the map isn't accurately reflecting like at that individual structure or property level. There is a letter of map change process, which essentially allows them to file, you know, usually that requires, you know, having a surveyor come in and, you know, get some elevations and stuff on your property or your structure. But, you know, they can submit that information to NOAA, or sorry, not NOAA, FEMA. And then, you know, that will be taken into consideration, and sometimes an amendment to the map can be made. There are also what we call map revisions. Those would be larger scale things where, let's say, a developer was looking at building a mall and they are doing all this, you know, and they're like, we want to, you know, make you know, use fill to change the landscape here so that's not in the area. That requires a lot of engineering and analysis, but the letter of map the letter of map amendment process for like an individual property or structure is probably the most efficient way to do that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you can work in reverse too, because there could be a potential landowner that thought that their land was in a flood prone area. And they were looking forward to being able to purchase the floodplain insurance. And but their land's not in the
They can still get it,
or was taken out of because the maps are inaccurate, first, the preliminary maps.
but they can
So-
still.
I guess you're right,
Yeah.
it's available to anybody that wants it. Okay,
Right.
yeah, that's a viewpoint, yeah, scratch that.
Yeah,
So,
theoretically, any change could be considered. So, if there is data available that basically, shows the map is wrong, there is a process. Again, because of the data requirements and engineering that might go into that process, it can sometimes be costly, but yeah, so there are ways to change the map after it's been adopted. But those require, some degree of cost oftentimes from, the landowner.
so I don't know if you can answer this question, but, so say these go into effect in May 2025. We're past our March voting date. If
How
we,
does that work?
if we vote to participate
Yeah.
at the, as a non-mapped community, and we have an ordinance as a non-mapped community, then the maps go into effect in May, we have to wait until March.
Yeah, I don't
We-
understand that at all.
we don't have a-
Honestly, I don't understand that. at
I
all.
mean, it
How-
seems like,
That was set in May, and their meeting is in March, and they don't have any other regulatory process to adopt it.
well,
I don't understand.
I mean,
how
we
does
could
that
have a
work.
special town meeting, but we won't get that many people
Yeah,
participating in that
because you were saying,
typically.
Kyle, that we try to work around the town schedule, but that
Ye-
would involve like getting a letter of final decision, in like December.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't, again, that risk analysis branch that does the mapping is
Yeah.
is independent of our group for several reasons, but largely to, one of the things is, we can't really influence the timing of these things. We can try to coordinate. We work very aggressively with them to help them understand that New Hampshire has this, kind of unique town meeting process, which can make it challenging. We just went through with Grafton County some map adoptions, and the timing of that was terrible. It was, the LFD date ended up being like a couple weeks after it was really challenging. But again, like, Heather's team worked really well with us to, in that situation to try to coordinate as much as possible. So I heard the mention of a special town meeting.
Mm.
Again, that would be up to you guys, if you wanted to use that approach. Based on what we did with Grafton County, I understand that there is a law in New Hampshire that basically allows communities to adopt the map, like the FIS map date, the LFD date for the new maps without going to town meeting. So that is something a lot of communities in Grafton County did, where they already had an ordinance that was compliant, that was consistent with the minimum standards or higher. And that meant all they had to do was, I don't know exactly the process, but I think for a lot of those communities, it was just like the select board had to add essentially a notation to the ordinance saying that, the most up-to-date map was, map date X. And that was sufficient for them to remain in the program. So if that's the standard, I believe it would be sufficient to join the program as well. If there was already a ordinance that met the minimum standards in place.
Just adding a few thoughts here. I mean, I think I haven't been here for the entirety of this application process. Have we, and I believe that we're trying to be proactive here. Is that right? think, given this circumstance, I don't think it makes sense for us to try to pass something in March. If we don't actually have it till maybe May, and it might be July, right, when we get it.
We've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years. And it's always been, we need the maps, let's get the maps.
Yeah,
Because they don't know how to enforce it.
Yeah, we need the maps. And we-
Without maps, how do you tell someone no, yes or no on an application if we don't know?
what are we gonna say to them?
Yeah, so that's why we've always kind of kicked the can, because we needed the maps.
Nothing, we have nothing from FEMA on our, have been told several times that Temple has never been mapped.
There was another community that doesn't have digitized maps, but they had, I don't know if this is from FEMA. Are we talking about FEMA maps, Kyle? But
There are some, there are some areas in our region that have never been mapped, so that is not impossible. I'm just trying to dig a little bit here and see if I can
I mean,
find
we've
some
gone
additional
to
information.
our Regional Planning Commission to try to get maps that we could use, and
They didn't
there's
have
no
anything.
GIS maps, we're not.
What are the
Yeah.
maps, when we go on our Temple, TempleNH.org, and you click planning board, and then you click FEMA maps, and you look at the Kentucky and the
Yep,
Sauhegan watershed, and it shows Temple.
Yep.
And it shows the A zone, or they call it the A zone, the blue zone.
Yep.
So when was that? I mean, those are maps.
those are the preliminary
Those
maps.
are the preliminaries, so.
Yeah.
I guess,
which don't really exist yet in a regulatory.
Right, that's
Right.
so not enforceable.
Concord used the US Army Corps of Engineers maps. for months.
Yeah, I feel like we've tried US Geological Survey. I mean, we tried multiple sources to get maps that we could use.
Yeah, so I pulled up in the FEMA, it's called the Map Service Center, or the MSC, is our sort of online database where you can pull even the old non-digitized maps. And I'm looking at a map where there is a zone mapped right up to the town line, and it cuts right off there.
And
So,
then this drops. Yep, we are pretty sure the water is not gonna stop at the town
Right,
line.
exactly. It just slide by the line of the page.
No, no.
I guess my point is though that I understand it's frustrating because you guys have been doing this for 5 years, right, and kicking the can, but I don't know that it makes sense for us to put a lot of effort into something that doesn't exist yet. And when that time comes, we can be ready to do it, but if it's not there today.
You'll be so ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, all your T's crossed.
Right, because I feel like if we adopted the non-mapped community regulations, then we're tied to the 120 days. But if we don't adopt it and we wait until the maps, then we're not locked into the 120 days.
So
So we have more time, as you were saying, to.
Right.
I'm looking
So
at
the-
earlier communications from FEMA, that talks about their FEMA risk map process for the state of New Hampshire.
Yep.
And it talks about the process we've talked about, discovery, having flood risk review meetings, preliminary maps issued, the appeal period. And then it talks about the letter of final determination, LFD, and the 6-month adoption period.
Yep.
Which is,
But he was saying 4 months, but I think you're right, it's actually.
it says
6 months.
6 here, so when we get the LFD, the letter, it establishes the final flood hazard and the effective date for the reports and maps. It also includes a 6-month period during which the community must adopt or amend its floodplain management regulations to reference the date and title of the new report. So basically it ties that
Okay.
map to our regulation.
So you have basically.
6
till
months.
October or whatever.
Yeah, till October to do it.
But you, since
we
you're
don't
not a
reg-
member, you don't have.
We
to
don't
do anything.
have a regulation yet. You're right, because we're not a
So
member.
if you wait, it's just.
Yeah.
2026, then you just do it all at once and you're
Okay.
good.
All right, yeah, you're
You're
right,
not-
that's a reference.
Right, you do it all.
Okay.
To our knowledge, we don't have anybody that has come forward that is in the flood prone area that's looking. We don't have a lot of development in this town,
Yeah,
so, and the selectmen haven't had anybody come in looking that wanted to get floodplain insurance.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're not
There's
just,
current buildings in the flood,
Yeah,
in the
at the
map
moment.
areas.
when I say that in 6 months,
I know.
3 months from now, somebody's gonna come in and say, why don't you have this? But we haven't for several years, we just doesn't.
But we now have the preliminary maps, so. if
We
someone-
could advise
We could advise, if someone came with
or
a
recommend,
subdivision plan
but-
to us.
right?
We could obviously against the map voluntarily. Came with a building permit, select board. And it's near a floodplain, the select board say, hey, go look at this, might apply to you someday. So give them a heads up, but we're not obligated to do that, I suspect. Just advisory. Today, yeah.
And you, whatever you come up with, I mean, I'll send you the model. and
Okay,
You can reach out to me anytime and ask us to review whatever you're working on. That's what it's
Okay.
for.
Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. Well, thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you, thank you for going easy on me, thank you Kyle for your.
Thank
for
you,
your help.
Kyle.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
no, happy to support any future conversations. If you guys have questions, obviously Heather is very available. But we at the region, support her, but also support you. So anything you guys need, just let us know. And
Yeah.
thank you for the opportunity.
You can have-
Thank you.
you
Thank
can
you.
be anything, Kyle.
Are you from New Hampshire, Heather?
Originally, I'm from central New York. I've been in New Hampshire for about 10 years now.
Oh, okay.
It's my forever home now. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in. Okay. Thanks again, Kyle.
Like he's gone already.
On already. Okay.
Thanks,
Yeah,
you too.
You too.
Right.
Okay, so next on the agenda will be the zoning ordinance updates.
So I put in the new language that was voted on in March, and I asked everybody to take a look at it and see if I made any mistakes, if it looks okay. I highlighted the changes that were made. I mean, I think most of them are pretty self-explanatory. They just match what was on the zoning amendments. The only one I wanted to point out specifically was the petition one. That's the language from Laura Spector Morgan. That's on the Board of Adjustment, so that's the last one in that document, I think. Want to look at this one first? A million times. So the yellow is the language from the petition, and then the green is the note from Laura Spector Morgan. And if you found any mistakes in the other stuff, please let me know.
I read them earlier today. What time did you send those?
Last Friday,
Is it? Okay.
I think, or maybe Thursday.
Don't see me.
Believe it, got that.
It would have been a PDF.
I did. There was 3 attachments, right?
That sounds right. Yep,
Friday, yeah, I see the two.
Yeah, here it is, right here. I got you.
yep.
Yeah. It was the 12th.
On the 12th. I see the presentation we just saw on the 12th.
Yep, I sent it after that.
Did not appear.
Do you want to send it to them now, or Bruce, are you able to?
Forward.
I can see if I can find it online.
Just send it to you, Carter and Murray.
Hopefully I sent it to everyone and not just the Temple Planning Board. I wonder if I just sent it to Temple Planning.
It's TPD.
Oh, I mean, I got it.
Well, I know, but you're.
Oh,
on-
because I'm the chair. I
You're
give
the
it out.
chair.
I give it out. Also, maybe it was just me that got it.
That's what I'm thinking, you and Kathy. And you can't see if I did a BCC.
All it says is all, it has your note that all words.
Yeah, I wonder if I forgot to
It didn't happen, so, but that's all right, we got it now.
BCC everyone.
Proposed zoning amendments, that's the one we put on previously.
Jim, do I have your email? I can forward it to you too if you want.
I don't know if you have it. but-
I don't think I do.
I can't even find it on my own.
I have it if you
Can-
don't.
Yeah, can you forward it to, please, to sure. And George has a paper copy, so.
Went out to my car for a second. Your battery for this thing.
I looked at them real quick and I
Cause
looked at them real quick. I didn't see
Mm.
the issue. Nothing jumped out at me as an issue. When
I can resend it too, but, I could, do you want me to just, have you,
I mean,
been able to open it? Okay. I have not posted anything yet, or I can wait to post it, online until everyone's had a little more time to look at it, but if we could just look at the
Sure.
legal note,
Sure. You're
On
on,
the zoning update review, or which one?
yes. Yep,
So we're at proposed zoning amendment 1, right?
well, I'm just looking at the Board of Adjustment, the petition one right now, but you can.
Okay.
Well, unless you want to go through all of them, we can certainly do that.
Do we need to?
I don't know. I wanted to know if I made any mistakes,
Yeah.
and,
Anything
I've looked at it too many times to catch them, so that's why I asked others to look. Yeah, so there's the numbering one.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at here.
Yep,
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I read all this and I didn't, nothing jumped out at me.
okay. And then the building and fire code. Language, the impermeable surface definition. The table of uses for each zoning district. And then there's a whole bunch of definitions that were updated. And then the last one was the petition one, so. we can have that in the right order now.
Yeah, the Board of Adjustment. isn't it?
Yeah,
the board adjustment is, you have the exact wording, I'm gonna guess.
in yellow was
have-
from the petition.
Yeah, I just don't see it, it shows up as black.
Oh, okay, so
Um,
so there's the first 3 lines, and then starting on the 3rd line where it starts with the Board of Adjustment consisting of 5 members.
Okay, so that's
That's
the
the
exact
petition
wording.
language. Yep,
And then you've got the legal clarification that says this is not enforceable,
right,
so we shall do the following.
right, so
All right.
the Board of Adjustment members will be elected as petition, put in, and then just the alternates are still appointed by the ZBA. We're not by the select board, because that's what the RSA says. So the ZBA appoints its own alternates.
Okay.
And so is it in our purview, our onus on us to present this with the correct verbiage, or would it be the petitioner?
No, it's up to us
It's up to
next
us.
year,
Okay,
in March next year, to put the correct verbiage in.
okay, and
So
not
this
not
is
the
what it
petitioner.
is now,
Okay.
Okay.
and then next year we would just make that correction. It's just the alternate.
I just didn't know because it was done, that's a petition warrant article, it wasn't from our board,
Yeah. No,
so I didn't know if the actual
well, it's
petitioner had.
because it's contrary to the state law, it's up to us to
Okay.
correct it. I thought she had said it was the select board we had to do something, but she said, no, we would just have to correct it next year.
So This
The
would,
next year. Oh, sorry.
yeah, this would be a proposed zoning amendment that would be voted on
Yes.
next year.
Again, yeah,
Right.
the right verbiage.
Okay, so how
Right.
does it, so is the change to the ZBA not in effect until that vote?
No, so the rest of it is in effect.
Okay, all right,
It's an
Just-
elected position,
Yep, it's just the alternate.
just the alternates. Yeah.
but we've got a different election process per the RSA. In other words, we're not going to go. We're not going to just, so year one, we can't just elect 2 members and 1 alternate. In year one,
We elect 2
we
members.
elect members, assuming that there's 2 members if term expires.
No, 2 members will still be,
Oh, because does it change the number of members?
Two-
Starting
They'll look
this
at the-
coming March,
Yeah,
there's be different years of
2025.
appointments.
yeah.
So whoever is up for reappointment would have to run for
Have
election.
to run next March.
Correct.
That would
Right.
be year.
Yes,
That's year one, next
Oh,
March.
okay.
March
All right.
2025, yeah.
All right. So that assumes that in March, there's 2 people who will time out.
yes.
And that, but if they don't time out, if they're still an effective member.
Right.
You haven't looked at the
They say,
terms, but yeah,
I think it's when their term expires.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
right. When the term of each member expires, then
There's
2
an elect- yeah.
new members are elected.
Yep, okay.
So I don't see anything wrong with what you did there.
Okay,
Yeah, that was
she wrote it, so
Okay.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
before I put anything live. And so then I think you looked at this already, George. Then just in general, we did the numbering. So when I added all this stuff, a lot of the formatting went a little haywire because pages changed and things carried over. So I can keep the numbering the way it is, or I can go through and try to be more consistent with the labeling. In other words, our articles are Roman numerals, but if you look in a different section of our ordinance, it also uses Roman numerals for the sections. So I could change it so it's articles, Roman numerals, sections are numbered.
It would make more
Below
sense to be
bullets.
consistent.
Yeah, and I can do that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I guess I would ask for a commitment from other members to check my work and not just assume I got it right, because if I'm willing to put the time in, but I don't want to put it out there unless somebody's made sure I'm
Okay,
So literally whoever checks this has to have a copy of the current
Yeah.
zoning.
exactly.
And literally
basically, and
Page
basically,
go down
by
through
page.
page by page.
that one, we're certifying that, hey, only numbering changed, not
Exactly,
the content.
exactly. Yeah,
In
yeah.
addition to making sure it all numbers correctly.
So who wants to check
And-
Christine's work?
Well, and we can break it up into sections, so one person isn't doing all of
So not
it.
doing all of
Yeah, I get it.
Somebody can take a section or an article and do it that
it.
way.
All right.
Yeah.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to
Yeah.
help.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to help with that.
I think as long as
Thanks, George. Do you want to keep this?
we'll just have to, you'll
Yeah.
keep track of what you're changing.
Right, so you know.
So-
Well, I mean, I almost feel like I shouldn't tell you what I'm changing.
Yeah, right.
So, because you might pay more attention
Yeah.
or only pay attention to what I've said I've changed. Because I might miss other stuff.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, it'd be good to do a full comparison side by
Yeah.
side.
yeah,
It's the only way to really do it.
yeah,
The right way.
right. So, okay, well, I will work on that.
How many pages is the zoning ordinance?
It's like 70
70 something,
pages.
yeah.
62.
Well,
Well, of what you said.
yeah, there's more than that. So, okay, I will get on that
You know,
and,
it's been a continuous improvement process.
yeah, and it always will be,
Yeah.
is the thing. So.
So everybody's okay with the rest of the zoning?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, and if you catch anything after you look at it at home, let me know.
Okay.
I'll wait a couple days.
Yeah, now that they can all see it.
Yeah,
and so we put the year in that we changed something.
Yeah.
Now, if
Yes.
that's a new thing.
Well, I should forward this to Russ too, right?
yes, please. And George, if you have.
Yeah.
And James, and Brian, because I think I only sent it to the temple planning, if you might get.
Kathy just sent it to James, so,
Oh, okay, great.
what's George's son?
Sophie
Oh,
something.
I did send it to.
Sophie, right?
Yeah, don't say the whole thing.
Oh,
Okay.
no,
We're being recorded. We don't want them to get any junk mail.
Okay. Boom, done.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, next would be the natural resources regulatory audit.
I don't think we have any update on that other than to say that I got the digital maps from CAI and Russ was kind enough to open that file and send it to Jeff Littleton, so his map guy can work on it. So I would, if you don't mind, if I can just say on the tax map updates, your website is updated now with the current maps, the most recent versions. So if you want to take a look at those, see if they're, everything looked okay to me, but those are done. So those two things you can cross off the list. The only thing I would say is, like Russ has a Google Drive of the digital files, and I think they really should be accessible from the town office. So I think I emailed Bill, because he's still the chair, right? Select board. So I emailed him to try to make sure that Carol is able to get a copy of it, so they have one down in the office too. So for natural resources, that kind of, we just kind of covered three things. I sent the maps.
Mhm.
The event tomorrow night for the natural resources
Right.
presentations
Right.
happening. Yes,
Right.
yeah, there we go. I think that covers all my stuff till we get down to the land use survey.
Is there any new news with the HOP?
We met last night, we are finishing up our one-on-one interviews with folks and those are continuing until the end of the month. And then at that point, we will be starting to formalize a recommendation to the planning board as an outcome of that exercise and all of our other events that we've had in the past year. So we're still going through the interview process with people and wrapping that up.
How's it, can you tell how it is going, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we have maybe done the number of interviews that we had hoped to, but I think the interviews that I've done with people have been really good and it's helpful to talk. I've talked with a lot of people that haven't been to any of our forums or other things, so that has been, it's been good to have conversations with people. I think they have a chance to speak about what they want to see in Temple. So I think it has been a good thing. I don't know, Kathy, if you want to add to that.
Our interview went great. Oh, that's right. Wait, we haven't done that yet. Did you say you're available during the day? You did say that, right? You're during the day you're available sometimes?
Yeah, as long as it's
Yeah.
grace.
Okay,
I can be pretty flexible,
yeah, so I only have a couple weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
think you have another potential interview.
Well, yeah, and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, not sure how much I can contribute, only being in town for.
Yeah. To just get a wide variety.
That's right.
They interested in interviewing a family that's moving in June of this year. Or to get,
Get a good perspective.
If it's someone who's trying to move to Temple and wants housing.
my son and his, they would be interested. That's the reason I didn't respond back to you yet, was that I was checking to see if they would be interested, and then I was gonna ask them.
And we can do it over Zoom. if
We
that's-
do it all.
Yeah.
That'd be good, because
They don't have to come here.
they have kids.
Yeah.
And so they would have a different perspective than I have.
Okay, well, thanks, guys, for doing that. New business?
Yep. So this is, it's not in color, but this is something that the planning board gets every year from the Office of Planning and Development, the Land Use Regulation Survey. They just want us to verify the information on here is correct. And send it back to them. And, you know, basically they're looking to see if we have adopted any new zoning that we didn't have before. So it's something that you would fill out. So obviously we have to change the contact person from me to you.
So I can download that right here?
Yeah.
That's where I download it? Okay.
Yep, and fill that in, but I don't know if others wanted to look at it and everyone should see what goes on here, but
So this is last year's?
this is what they have put together for us based on what they've seen from our zoning, because they get copies of what we present. And then they want us to look at each line and confirm or, you know,
So this
Make a
is,
change.
this is what you
Yes.
downloaded from this? Okay.
yes, here,
So I can, so you want me
yeah,
to do this? Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But if you have questions, let me know, but I
Yeah.
thought it would be helpful for everyone to see,
To take a look at it.
yeah.
Does everybody have that email that Christine sent out?
I think it went with the agenda, right?
So we have,
So-
till June 1st to get it
Yeah,
sent in, so.
Right.
We have a little time.
yeah, I was just wondering on this planning consultant, if we check that because of the HOP grant, or, I mean, we don't have a consultant for regular
Yeah, when they
business, but
get like Ivy and Carol
yeah,
working with us for, I would consider that planning consultant.
I don't know if that's, because it's a special project, it's not
Is
all the
going
time.
to be wrapped up? Is that like prior year? Is that for?
I mean,
prior-
it's supposed to be yeah, for this year, I guess, yeah. Yeah, otherwise, I don't think much has changed, but you can look at it and.
Okay.
That's all.
Alright. So do we wanna, it's 8:30,
He
Marie,
doesn't have an update.
oh, we don't, so we're not gonna go into the driveway thing tonight anyway, okay. I was just wondering if we wanted to dive in to that, with the time being what it is. All right, so, the subdivision in New Ipswich, their meeting is tomorrow night.
Yep.
And of course, we have our meeting here tomorrow night, so I don't know if anybody's planning on, I'm gonna come to this meeting, I don't know if it was,
How about,
I'd like to ask members if anybody read the Main Student Leader on Sunday.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, they had a portability crisis makes voters more open to in-law living spaces.
Mm,
And they go on to say that residents in more than a dozen Manhattan and Souhegan area towns revised their accessory dwelling unit ordinances last month, with many relaxing restrictions on the number and size of units. Under the New Hampshire accessory dwelling unit law that took effect in 2017, homeowners statewide have the right to create an ADU for a family member or caregiver, or as a rental unit in accordance with local ordinances. Francistown, Hancock, Rins, and Swansea slightly increased the size of ADUs or expanded the areas in which they are permitted. Harrisville and Dublin tweaked their ordinance to make the language clear and consistent. Greenfield took one of the boldest steps on the issue. Homeowners in all zoning districts now may have one ADU on a house lot and up to 2 more ADUs with special exception. New Ipswich voters there increased the number of ADUs allowed on a 2-acre lot to 2. One must be attached, the other can be attached or detached. Vine Grove voters approved a revised ordinance that allows both attached and detached ADUs up to 2,000 square feet Previously, they only attached ADUs were allowed. In next door Wilton, one article increased the permissible size on an attached ADU from 800 square feet to up to 1,200 square feet, or 25% of the main house's floor space. Wilton doesn't permit detached ADUs without special exceptions. Wilton voters passed other housing related articles. Wilton voters passed included creating a downtown residential overlay district that lowers the minimum lot size in the downtown area served by sewer and water. Greens passed an article to clarify language, and another allows single family homes in the business commercial district to have ADUs. Francistown clarified ordinance language and ADUs maximum size from 750 to 1,000 square feet. Swansea expanded its ADU ordinance to allow attached ADUs on rear lots. Hancock increased the size of its ADUs from 768 square feet to a maximum of 1,000 square feet. So that's what's happening in local towns in this area.
That's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, Ashley emailed me today to ask me for my opinion on the
Oh, did you see
two
that?
bills. I didn't see that article, no, but I knew some of them,
When
but
are they gonna vote on the bills? When is the Senate gonna vote?
it just went to committee, so we'll have to see. It passed the House.
That's the House, right?
Yeah, so it's gone to committee.
Yeah, and thank you. You sent that email as well, following up on.
Yeah.
Brian had brought up. And
Yep,
we've already got that.
yep. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so we're not. We thought we were ahead of the curve. Apparently, there was, doing the HOP. The other towns have been working on this, and we didn't even know it probably for the last few years. So it makes you feel good, like we're doing the
We're on
right
the right
thing.
track.
We're on the right track.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, interesting. Wow, how can we get a copy of that?
Yeah, I don't get the union
I
later.
can make copies.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank
Can
you.
we go back to the thing tomorrow night? You're gonna go to the Temple meeting. Is anybody going to the New Ipswich meeting, or should I plan to do that one just so we can divide and make sure we're covering both of those? Anybody else planning to do the New Ipswich?
No.
Okay, okay. I know you.
I'm
it's 3 nights in a row.
definitely gonna go.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it.
This is the Conservation Commission with the Moosewood,
Oh,
ecological, natural resources. So, yeah, I feel like somebody should go. I mean, I was gonna go.
Yeah, we should go to,
Planning board,
somebody should go to both,
yeah,
or one or the other.
yeah, no, I'd
Both should be
like to
attended.
go.
On this, you know. But I can't,
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
I can go to the Lineborough one, so
okay.
that's fine. Don't worry about it.
Lineborough.
Sorry, not Lineborough, New Ipswich.
Mhm.
Lineborough on the brain.
It's Linebrook, they have something?
They don't. New Ipswich, I make sure I go to the right place. It's a New Ipswich. I will go there to that one tomorrow night, and you'll go to, they're recording the natural resource.
As long as the technology works.
Okay, so I can watch it later. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, so. Future meeting for the site plan. Audit results, filing project.
Nothing new. Well, sort of.
Yeah, well, so when I actually was interviewing Carol for the interviews. She mentioned that the select board in the past has the stance that they didn't want to pay for any additional website work for her to do. So, our idea of putting things up on the website, change things, directly uploading more files onto the website may not be in the cards, but she also said, you can always approach the select board because maybe they'll like this idea and this is a good, a good use of funding. But then I also was thinking, Dropbox, and again, we'd have to look into the cost of Dropbox and see how much that would cost. But theoretically, we wouldn't have to change anything to our website, because Dropbox is its own separate website. And so from our agenda, we can literally link to the Dropbox folder that has all the files. So that way we would just be responsible for uploading the files into the Dropbox folders. And no changes, nothing would change in Carol's life.
Has everyone seen the Dropbox on the New Ipswich?
Yeah, I saw that on their site. I mean, that's.
You can pass it around, but this is their agenda, and then there's their Zoom info, and then they have this Dropbox. And you click on
And
that,
I mean, maybe it would be the planning board that would pay for Dropbox.
Right.
and then here's all their files related to the meeting. And so that's the subdivision files in a
Mhm.
different folder, and
Everything that they're working on.
everything they're
Their
working
planning board,
on,
yeah.
is all in one folder. So,
Hmm.
yeah. I can,
And this is for things that aren't currently on the websites.
Right,
Here's
currently on the website, it's just
And then
down
down
here,
here,
agenda, like,
Dropbox link,
like the final master plan and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
all of the drafts and the
and then it
things are
brings up,
usually not up there. although
brings up all the
drafts
files
are.
related
I know.
that
Yeah.
they're talking about, and there's the one for the,
Yeah. Well,
not me. Here's all the files related to the hearing.
Oh, okay.
So right now, our site, we have planning board case files separate from the agenda, and, someone would really kind of have to look to find the information. So. James, were you able to see it, or you?
I just pulled it up.
Awesome.
No, perfect.
So that was kind of the thinking.
So the webinars and training, you two are gonna go
Yep.
tomorrow. That's right.
I signed up for that, 1 hour one too.
Thursday, is it Thursday?
Yeah, the one, once a month.
Yeah, the welcome to the board thing, yep.
And then there's the spring conference, on May 11th.
Yep.
Yes.
And all of those sessions are recorded, so if you can't attend that day, you can watch them later.
Okay, is there any other business?
I don't think so, unless you want to mention the inquiry we got on the lot in Randy's, Ken Sullivan's place. There was,
Oh, yeah, well,
they had
about the
received a-
merger?
they had received a quitclaim deed, and it had listed the lots as two separate lots, which was not how it is recorded in the tax database. So Carol in the office had inquired
Because they did a merger.
about that, and so I don't know who made the mistake, but there was a merger done of the two lots in 2012, so whoever did the deed missed that. It was properly filed, because there was references to it. And in the file that I found down at the office, and it had the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds numbers.
Yep.
Plan numbers and all that, so I'm not sure what happened there. I haven't heard any
Yeah,
follow-up.
I wasn't on the board then. The only merger I remember in that project, the Stonegate project was done, there was one done a few years ago.
Mhm.
And that's what I thought you were referring to, and then I looked at the date.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember
So,
this, yeah.
I
that's an
don't
old-
think it was buildable lot, and I think that's probably why it was merged.
Yeah.
What
nice.
was
It
it?
had kind of a weird.
What were these
weird shape.
lots?
It's over, in
It was
Randy's.
Ken Sullivan's place,
Project.
oh, yeah,
Stonegate. Yeah.
But if you just had two adjacent lots that you were merging together to make one building tax lot. That gets recorded in the town as, hey, that's one lot. But the deed could still say, this is one lot made up of lot number 3 and lot number 4 as shown on this plan from way back when. I used to own a house like that, so I was lot number 2 and lot number 3 that made up,
But you merged it as one lot.
but it is one lot from a building permit taxing
Mhm.
point of view. It's just the the plot plan laid out in 1960
I don't
had
remember
very
which
small
map
lots
it's
that
on.
everyone just kind of merged together.
see.
But the deed never changed. It
1A.
kept that because the plot
No,
plan-
no, it's here, it's over here.
Yeah, it's on the. it's
Probably
on the
because
border.
there never a survey.
Putnam, yeah, right. It's right, that's right, 9B, yes.
Not sure what's required these days, so.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if it is required on it. It's kind of separate, right, from the deed.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
Putnam would be. So maybe it's,
deed will reference the original
yeah, I feel like it's.
subdivision slash.
it could be,
Map
it could be 8A.
But it's wrong on the tax map.
That's
It's
just
not-
the map. No, the tax
the
map
tax
is
map
correct.
I don't think
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
This is the one.
yeah, there you go.
it had to be licensed back before.
So see how it used to be, like, there was no access for it.
uh,
They was an easement on his property to access the lot. There was no, it didn't have its own driveway, and that's why he merged it.
They were-
So it's just 8-2-3-8, and there used to be a 9, which you can kind of see there's a dotted line.
And he went.
And so, where, I'm sorry, where do they wanna fix
From
it?
people. and-
So-
No, they're just passing ownership. It's not, it was nothing for us, but she was
Okay.
confused because
he
she couldn't
walked
find a 9, a
Oh,
lot
I see.
9.
It's- Yeah,
And
The house. is
that there-
beyond-
that's,
official documents included a lot 9, but there isn't one anymore. On the original subdivision, there was,
Land process.
but then it was merged in 2012.
yeah.
He
That's
subdivided
all.
those in the lot.
So we don't need to do anything.
We don't need to do anything.
Okay.
I'm just sharing. Just
Yeah.
Because
Those all went through that.
questions come up and
Yeah,
that's
so
how you find the
Isn't it
answer.
odd that there's been two, within 10 years of each other, there was roughly 10 years of each other, there was 2 lot mergers in that.
Oh,
in
yeah.
that- In that project.
Right,
This just seems.
right. And another,
Chances that that would happen.
Right.
Lot mergers don't happen very often.
yeah,
Had 2 happen in the same area.
Thomas.
so that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
How do you vote?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
forgot I'm not chair anymore.
Hey,
but
so we did
Were those lots-
good. We
You
got
made it under 9.
under 9 o'clock.
Were those lots in that subdivision relatively small or smaller